Welcome to the G Security Podcast, Episode 3. I'm your host, Zach.
And I'm the resident expert, Jill.
Before we really jump into things today, I just want to give a very quick shout out to Mike in the control room.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for your help today, Mike. Just keeping everything running smoothly behind the glass. We literally could not do this without you.
Absolutely couldn't.
And actually, Mike, you might want to double check the configuration on your own management consoles today, because as we're about to discuss, the very tools that IT professionals use to keep systems secure are actively being turned into weapons of mass destruction by some highly sophisticated threat actors.
It is wild. It's just a massive paradigm shift.
Wild is a good way to describe it.
And we are looking at this incredibly timely article today. It's titled Beyond the Endpoint: Why the Management Layer is the New Frontline of Cyber Warfare.
Yeah, and that was written by Guy Albertini, right?
Yeah, exactly, by Guy Albertini. And it's actually posted on the blog page at gsharpsecurity.com. Oh, and the author also notes that this piece was kind of inspired by a really insightful LinkedIn post from Michelle Maraculo.
Awesome. Yeah, and the core thesis here, it basically just flips traditional security models completely upside down.
Totally.
Because I mean, for decades, the entire industry's obsession has been the endpoint. Hardening the individual laptop, deploying advanced telemetry to the employee's smartphone, basically just putting a massive moat around the single user.
Right? The granular grind.
Exactly. But this article highlights that advanced persistent threats are, well, they're essentially just bypassing that entire thing now.
They really are. They aren't trying to compromise 10,000 individual laptops one by one anymore. I mean, who has the time, right?
Yeah, right.
They are targeting the centralized management platforms that control those 10,000 laptops. They're just hijacking the IT department's own infrastructure to, deploy chaos globally.
It's terrifying. And the efficiency of it is what makes it so devastating.
Exactly. And the article anchors this whole shift with a very specific, recent catalyst: the 2026 cyber attack on the healthcare giant, Stryker.
Oh man, yeah, that was huge.
It was a huge deal. And the threat actor in this case was an Iran-linked group identified as Handala, and they basically managed to compromise a third-party cloud application. Specifically, it was a Unified Endpoint Management Platform, or a UEM.
Right? And for any of you out there managing enterprise architecture, a UEM isn't just some like passive directory.
No, not at all.
It has admin level access. It pushes registry changes. It enforces compliance policies, and it executes scripts across the entire fleet simultaneously.
Yes, simultaneously. That's the key word.
So when Handala compromised that centralized layer, they didn't just sneak in and steal data. They initiated a global network disruption that wiped out over 200,000 devices.
Over 200,000. It's hard to even wrap your head around that number.
Right. Laptops, servers, and mobile devices were bricked in a matter of minutes.
And the sheer velocity of a wipe command originating from a trusted UEM, it's basically impossible to stop at the endpoint level.
I guess the endpoint trusts it, right?
Exactly. The endpoint security software is explicitly designed to trust the UEM implicitly. So, when the command comes down to, say, format the drive, the local antivirus doesn't flag it as malware. It just sees it as an authorized administrative action.
Wow.
This is the fundamental difference between attacking the endpoint layer, which, usually results in localized lateral movement,
Yeah.
and attacking the management layer, which grants what the author so accurately describes as God mode control.
God mode. Yeah, that really is the perfect way to phrase it. Let's actually visualize the architecture here, because I think it helps clarify why traditional defenses are failing so badly at this.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, securing the endpoint is like managing a massive high-rise apartment building by putting a really heavy-duty, completely unpickable deadbolt on every single apartment door.
Okay, I like this.
Right. So if a burglar wants to steal something, they have to sweat and toil over one specific door. They might get in eventually,
Yeah?
but their blast radius is limited to that one single apartment.
Right. They aren't getting into the neighbor's place.
Exactly, but what Handala did, and what this whole management layer attack trend represents, is the burglar just ignoring the apartment doors entirely.
They don't even bother.
Right. Instead, they just break into the leasing office down in the lobby, they hack the electronic keycard server, and they send a signal to instantly unlatch every single door in the entire building at 3 a.m.
The leasing office server. That's the perfect way to look at it, because once you have access to that master server, your operational goals as an attacker change entirely.
Yeah, you're not playing small ball anymore.
Exactly. You aren't doing quiet espionage or trying to slowly exfiltrate a database over a period of months. You have the leverage for immediate mass destruction. You can deploy universal ransomware payloads in seconds, or, in Stryker's case, execute total system wipes. The endpoint represents a high volume of individual targets, but the management layer represents a single catastrophic point of failure, just because of that centralized authority.
And here is where I think we really need to look critically at the enterprise tech landscape, right? I mean, it is 2026. We operate with zero trust architectures, behavioral heuristics, massive security operations centers with huge budgets.
Oh, yeah, millions of dollars.
So if the industry knows this centralized authority is a single point of failure, why are Fortune 500 organizations still getting completely decimated by this specific vector? It kind of feels like we're just walking into a trap that we built ourselves.
Well, we did build the trap, but we built it because we require the scale.
What do you mean?
I mean, centralized management is a functional necessity for modern business. You literally cannot manually patch or provision 200,000 endpoints. It's impossible.
Okay, yeah, fair point.
But the author provides some really crucial historical context here, demonstrating that attackers have recognized this dependency for years now. The Stryker incident, it isn't an isolated thing. It's the culmination of a very clear pattern of exploiting centralized trust.
Right, the supply chain and management tool compromises, they've been escalating sequentially for a while.
Exactly!
The article points right back to the SolarWinds attack in 2020, which, that was really the watershed moment for weaponizing the management layer, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. In the SolarWinds case, the attackers compromised the Orion management platform by injecting malicious code directly into the actual build environment.
Which is just so sneaky.
It's brilliant and terrifying because this meant the software update that got sent out to all their clients was cryptographically signed. From the operating system's perspective, it was perfectly legitimate.
Right.
Government agencies, major corporations, they all installed the update because the fundamental mechanism of trust, the digital signature, was totally intact. The management tool itself literally became the Trojan horse.
Wow. And we saw like the exact same philosophy applied a bit differently in 2021 with the Kaseya attack.
Yes, Kaseya.
Right, where threat actors identified a vulnerability in Kaseya's VSA remote management software. But the twist there was they didn't just hit individual companies. They went after managed service providers.
Which is such a force multiplier.
Exactly, because if you compromise an MSP's management console, you don't just hit the MSP, you hit every single downstream client that they manage. It's this massive asymmetric multiplier effect.
And the mechanism of action in that Kaseya attack allowed the threat actors to deploy ransomware simultaneously across hundreds of organizations.
Hundreds, unbelievable.
So the ultimate takeaway here when you connect SolarWinds, Kaseya, and now Stryker is that cyber warfare has fundamentally shifted. It's moved away from exploiting technical vulnerabilities at the perimeter to exploiting the actual functional architecture of IT management. The very tools that are engineered to maintain compliance and security are being weaponized to execute chaos at scale. So for you listening, you really have to think about the centralized tools your own workplace relies on every single day.
Right? Think about what happens if the tool that updates your laptop goes rogue. It requires a fundamental teardown of how organizations design their administrative access. Because if the leasing office master server is the target, well, putting better deadbolts on the apartment doors is just a massive misallocation of resources.
100%.
We have to defend the kingdom by locking down the management layer itself. And the article lays out a really comprehensive management-first security approach to do exactly that.
It does. And it starts heavily with completely re engineering access protocols, because let's be honest, we're way past standard multi factor authentication at this point.
Oh, for sure. Standard MFA is basically dead.
Yeah. Things like SMS codes or even those push notifications on your phone, they are routinely bypassed now through session hijacking or adversary in the middle attacks. It's just not enough.
So what does the author suggest instead?
Well, he argues for strict conditional access combined with hardware bound authentication. So, for anyone accessing a management console, we are talking about physical FIDO2 security keys.
Gotcha.
But it goes beyond just having the hardware token. The access request itself has to be contextual. The system should outright reject the login if the administrator is trying to access the UEM from, say, an unmanaged personal device or from an IP address that's outside of a strictly defined geofence.
Right, that makes total sense. And you also have to isolate the management infrastructure at the network layer too.
Yes, network segmentation is huge here.
Because if a standard user's workstation gets compromised by a phishing payload, that malware shouldn't even be able to route traffic to the UEM server in the first place. Complete network segmentation is required so the management plane is virtually invisible to the rest of the corporate environment.
Invisible is the goal. But, even with hardware keys and network segmentation, you still run into the problem of persistent privileges.
Right, standing access.
Yeah, because if an admin account has permanent God mode, a compromised session is still completely lethal.
So how do we fix that?
The solution to persistent privilege is implementing just in time JIT access within a privileged access management framework. The whole philosophy there is that zero accounts should retain standing administrative rights. None.
Okay, I love this. Going back to our building analogy, this is basically like replacing the master key with a digital key card that remains completely inert, just a piece of plastic basically, until a specific work order is actively approved.
Exactly.
So if a plumber needs to fix a pipe, the key card only unlocks the boiler room door, and the access automatically revokes, it just self-destructs after a predefined 60-minute window.
Yeah,
So no one is just walking around with permanent God mode.
that's a great way to picture it. That temporary elevation of privileges drastically shrinks the attack surface. An attacker who steals credentials, well, they just find themselves sitting there with a standard user account because the admin rights simply do not exist in the directory at that moment.
Brilliant.
It really is. Furthermore, the article emphasizes that when those elevated sessions are active, they have to be subjected to rigorous auditing and session recording.
Yeah, you need a paper trail.
A flawless one. If a destructive command is issued, the security team needs immutable, tamper proof logs showing the exact sequence of events tied to an authenticated identity.
But relying solely on access controls assumes the perimeter will hold. And we know it doesn't always.
True.
We need a way to detect when a valid, authenticated session suddenly starts exhibiting malicious intent. Like if an administrator account suddenly issues a command to wipe 200,000 devices at 3 a.m. on a Sunday, the system shouldn't just blindly process it just because the account has the right permissions.
No, absolutely not. And this is where continuous telemetry mapping and user and entity behavior analytics come into play. UEBA.
Okay, break that down for us.
So, the monitoring systems have to establish heuristic baselines for every single administrative account. They basically map out the normal velocity of actions, the typical times of day commands are usually issued, and the standard scope of those commands.
Right, learning what normal looks like.
Exactly. So, a global wipe command deviates so drastically from that normal operating telemetry that the analytics engine should instantly flag it as highly anomalous.
It's the whole concept of multi-person approval for high-impact actions. Two keys to launch the missile.
Two keys.
Yeah, an automated system should intervene, pause the execution of the command entirely, lock the session, and demand a secondary out-of-band authorization from another senior architect before proceeding.
Which is so critical. But the complexity here increases significantly when we introduce third party cloud providers into this architecture.
Oh yeah, the supply chain problem.
Right. Because when an organization utilizes a cloud hosted UEM or a remote monitoring tool, they are effectively extending their most privileged management plane into an external data center that they don't even control.
Yeah, this expands the attack surface into environments you just straight up don't own.
Yeah,
You're operating under this shared responsibility model, but at the end of the day, if the vendor's infrastructure is breached, it's your fleet of devices that gets wiped.
it's your nightmare to deal with. That's why organizations have to shift from implicit trust to continuous verification with their supply chain.
Trust but verify, right?
Or like verify and verify again. The author insists on demanding rigorous proof of security controls from these vendors.
What does that look like in practice?
It means requiring full visibility into their incident response plans, actually analyzing the results of their independent penetration tests, and legally enforcing stringent service level agreements around vulnerability patching. I mean, if you're handing a third party the keys to your network, they must prove, continuously, that their vault is impenetrable.
Absolutely. So all of that, the first phase of this strategy is all about prevention and detection at the management layer.
Right.
But the modern threat landscape dictates that we really have to operate under an assumed breach mentality. If we accept the reality that a highly resourced nation-state actor might eventually bypass the hardware keys, outsmart the behavioral analytics, and slip past the vendor vetting, the conversation has to pivot to resilience and recovery.
Yeah, what happens the morning after?
Exactly. What happens when they get God mode anyway?
Well, the ability to recover from a management layer compromise is entirely dependent on the architecture of your backups. And in this context, the author stresses that the backups must be strictly immutable and physically or logically air gapped.
And we have to look really closely at how immutability is actually implemented, because attackers are smart. They know to target the backup infrastructure first.
They absolutely do.
So if your backup storage arrays are managed by the same compromised Active Directory, the attacker doesn't even need to decrypt the backups. They just wipe the storage array's operating system entirely.
Exactly. Which is why true immutability requires hardware level or strictly isolated cloud controls. The data literally cannot be altered, encrypted, or deleted for a set retention period, not even by an account with full global administrator privileges.
Wow, okay.
And the article also stresses that these isolated backups must include the critical system configurations of the management tools themselves.
Oh, that's interesting. Not just the data,
Right. Because when disaster strikes, you aren't just restoring endpoint data. You have to rebuild the entire management infrastructure from scratch before you can even begin communicating with your fleet.
which means your disaster recovery testing has to actually mirror this specific nightmare scenario.
Yes, it has to be realistic.
Right? You can't just simulate a simple database failure. You have to run tabletop exercises where you assume your entire UEM, your identity provider, your network switches, everything is actively hostile.
And mapping out those dependencies requires comprehensive, continuous risk assessments focused specifically on the management layer. Security teams need to document exactly which platforms hold God mode permissions, and then they need to evaluate the cascading blast radius if any single one of those platforms is compromised.
It requires a brutally honest assessment of your interconnected systems and all those third-party API integrations.
A very brutal. And to maintain this level of discipline, organizations have to map their operations to rigorous frameworks. The source highlights the necessity of adopting standards, like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 or ISO 27001.
And those aren't just compliance checkboxes, right?
No, not at all. They provide the actual engineering architecture for defending the management plane. They operationalize the paranoia, basically.
I like that. Operationalizing paranoia.
Right. They enforce strict change management processes and require organizations to establish really secure configuration baselines. Like, if you know the exact cryptographic hash of your management tool's configuration file, you can deploy drift detection.
So you know instantly if something changes.
Exactly. The moment an attacker alters a setting to, say, create a backdoor, the system flags the violation, and it can automatically revert the configuration back to the known good state. It removes the ad hoc nature of security and replaces it with engineered resilience.
But even with perfectly engineered frameworks, human analysts simply cannot process the sheer volume of log data generated by a global management plane,
Oh, no human could. We're talking about millions of events per hour.
right? So to actually detect the subtle living off the land techniques used by these advanced persistent threats, the architecture has to leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning.
It's the only way. Rules based security logic is just too rigid to catch a sophisticated actor who is using legitimate administrative tools to move laterally.
Because they look like they belong there.
Right. But machine learning algorithms can ingest that mountain of telemetry data in real time and correlate seemingly disjointed events. An AI can detect the microscopic anomalies, like a slight shift in API call frequency or an unusual sequence of completely legitimate administrative commands.
Which indicates a compromised session long before the destructive payload is ever actually launched.
Exactly. It provides predictive insight. And maybe more importantly, machine speed response. If the AI detects a behavioral anomaly in the leasing office server, it can instantly sever the network connection and isolate the compromised account.
Wow, so it executes the quarantine before a human analyst could even open the alert dashboard.
That's the goal. And, um, taking a step back to look at the broader industry context here, all the research and methodologies we're discussing today, they actually stem from the work being done at G-Sharp Security.
Right, the company behind the blog post.
Yeah. And while the article doesn't serve as, like, a full biography for their CEO and founder Guy Albertini, it clearly outlines the strategic vision and the practical services that the organization brings to the table.
Yeah, they are heavily focused on providing the specialized cybersecurity consulting required to actually architect these complex defenses. Because building a resilient management layer, it isn't just a product you can buy off the shelf.
No, it's not plug and play.
It requires deep strategic guidance to overhaul access models, implement zero trust policies, and integrate that advanced AI telemetry we just talked about. G-Sharp Security's role is basically to help enterprises navigate this incredibly hostile landscape and build systems that can actually withstand a targeted assault on their core infrastructure.
And Guy really drives this point home in the final summary of the article.
What's the main takeaway there?
Well, it's that the paradigm of resilience has fundamentally evolved. Technical controls, the hardware keys, the immutable backups, the ML algorithms, they're absolutely foundational, but they are not the end game. True resilience is a state of continuous evaluation. It requires an organization to constantly adapt its security posture against evolving attack methods, anticipate the vectors targeting their management layers, and possess the hardened infrastructure necessary to endure and fully recover from a catastrophic breach.
It really is a continuous proactive cycle of defending the very tools that defend the network.
Well said.
Thank you. Which, it leaves us with a critical, almost philosophical problem to consider as we look toward the future of enterprise architecture.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we've established that human analysts can't keep up with the telemetry, right? Which requires us to deploy AI and automated systems to monitor our most privileged management layer. But as we increasingly grant these AI systems the absolute authority to isolate networks, lock out administrators, and enforce zero trust policies,
Yeah.
how do we ensure the AI watchdogs themselves don't become the next target for a God mode exploit?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I mean, if the system protecting the master key is compromised, who watches the watcher?
That is the multi-million-dollar question. The attack surface will inevitably shift to target those automated response mechanisms. The engineering challenge going forward is ensuring the AI's logic engine remains entirely isolated from the environment it monitors.
The cat and mouse game continues and the stakes are honestly only getting higher. Well, thank you all for joining us for this conversation. If you found this analysis valuable and you want to keep exploring these crucial security concepts with us, Please take a second to like this video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We would love to have you back for more. Until next time, stay safe, stay secure, and keep a very close eye on that management layer.